during the recording, they can opt out, I guess. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's community session, Love Doesn't Hurt, following the budgets for ending violence against women and girls, which is organized by the Gender Budget Watchdog Network. First of all, I'd like to like to outline that our project and all of our efforts in the Western Balkans and Moldova are supported by the Austrian Development Agency and the Swedish International Development and Cooperation Agency. Thanks to them, we're all working on these issues currently. We're a network of organizations from the Western Balkans and Moldova who deal with gender-responsive budgeting, and through that, actually, we strengthen transparency and accountability of our governments in the terms of gender responsiveness. My name is Mirci Hajaskic. I'm a program manager at Centar za promociju civilnog društva, but also the project coordinator for the Gender Budget Watchdog Network in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we're going to quickly move on to today's topic. So February, as we know, in the modern terms and everything else today, is called the month of love, since there's the very famous, world famous celebration of love on the 14th of February. It's a time of celebrations, a time of warmth connection with your significant others. But for far too many women in our region, this month is a stark reminder of actually fear, danger, and insecurity. Violence against women is not a personal issue. It presents actually a systemic crisis that persists across all of our societies. And it's deeply rooted in inequalities, discrimination, and most critically, the lack of real dedication and investment in preventing, protecting, and providing justice for everyone. While preparing the announcement of this event, I had a chance to actually go through some news articles from all of our countries, from Moldova to Albania, Serbia, Kosovo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, North Macedonia. And I have somehow managed to get a grasp of all of the issues, and I wanted to screenshot all of the titles in the media. And then all of a sudden, I started missing out space on the visual to actually put everything that was happening. And I just put the basic ones that I could find in all of our languages and from all of our countries. And then I opened the news in Bosnia, and there's news of another murder being committed, another femicide that took place. And that's the sort of the very dark reality that we face, I guess. And the Western Balkans and Moldova, all of the countries that I've mentioned, have made various commitments to actually combating violence against women and girls through laws, strategies, and action plans, and especially through their commitment to the fulfilling or delivering the Istanbul Convention in our countries. In the past years, the Gender Budget Watchdog Network has actually been advocating for more funding directed at solving the crisis caused by violence against women and girls, because funding is also one of the perspectives that's out there in the Istanbul Convention that somehow gets missed out. And the real question is actually, are these commitments backed by sufficient funding? Because without the budgets, policies remain just words on paper. And as we all know from our own context, women and often children along with them suffer without access to adequate support services, legal assistance, preventive education, and so on. So today we're bringing together organizations from across the region who have dedicated their work to fighting gender-based violence, supporting survivors, and pushing for the systemic change that I've mentioned, I think, already 3 times. And their specific experiences from Kosovo, Montenegro, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Moldova, and North Macedonia will help us unpack the reality behind government funding and whether it actually aligns with the needs of women and girls at risk. We will not have anyone speaking from Serbia and from Albania, but I hope my colleagues will jump in with their takes on this. Before we begin, I'm going to shortly introduce our speakers and then call out each one of them to share what they're currently working on. And for everyone that will need interpretation from the languages that they will use in their presentations, there's an option of interpretation on Zoom. So Elirieta Beka will join us today from Kosovo. She's the coordinator of the Gender Budget Watchdog Network for Kosovo at the Kosovo Women's Network, an organization that actually leads the advocacy for more accountability and transparency on different government policies, but also works with gender-based violence issues. Biljana Zekovic is the executive director of SOS Podgorica in Montenegro, an organization that actually has decades of experience in providing direct support to survivors of violence, and an organization that has been advocating for policy change in these terms. Neira Rakovic represents Women's Voice from Bosnia and Herzegovina. They work in women's empowerment, mostly in Bihać and Unsko-Sanski canton, but they have also been very, very present on the level of the entity of Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and they're currently among the organizations leading the process of amending the Criminal Code of Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina in terms of introducing better alignment with the Istanbul Convention and introducing femicide as a criminal offense. Angelina Zaporojan Pergari, the executive director of Women's Law Center in Moldova, is a legal expert and activist working on policy reform in Moldova, and working directly with women in terms of providing support services. Ana Nomoska, last but not least, is a project manager and legal researcher at Aqua of North Macedonia, a youth-led organization working on gender equality, education, and also activism. So I'm not gonna speak anymore. I'm gonna invite Biljana if she joined us. Did Biljana join us or not yet? We're still waiting for Biljana. Okay. Then I'm gonna ask Neira to present the work of Women's Voice from Bihać and the current state of violence against women and everything that's going on in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Hvala, merci. Prije svega sve vas srdačno pozdravljam i evo zahvaljujem na prilici da možemo ispričati ovu, da kažem, uspješnu priču koje su žene iz prije svega Unsko-Sanskog kantona iz Federacije iznjedrile i evo nadam se da će ona biti inspirativna za sve vas širom regiona. Kao što vjerovatno znate, znači femicid, dolazim ispred organizacije Glas žene koja se bavi aktivno zagovaranjem zaštitu ženskih ljudskih prava, rodnom jednakost, prevencijom rodno zasnovanog nasilja, mirem i evo...
Izvini, Neira, samo malo sporije zbog prevoda.
Okay.
Please, can you slow down for translation's sake? So the problem of femicide in Federation, first of all, it's been for about 2-3 years that we advocate for the introduction of femicide, specifically the murder of Dina Ipasic in Bihać in 2022. We started with the advocacy. This process was a long and complicated one, but as of summer last year, in a way, the complete NGO sector went latent, and regarding femicide, and we accepted that it will not be introduced. We tried to muster our last atoms of power and started to fight together with our colleagues from the other parts, initiatives of citizens of Mostar, then the association Izvor from Sanski Most, and I love a little bit slower, please. They write that they cannot hear you. The translation, actually. So our campaigns, in a way, we initiated them to gain the signatures of 10,000 people and hand it to Ministry of Justice that femicide be qualified as a separate criminal offense. From what we learned from our Croatian colleagues, we received their definition of femicide, and they have spent a lot of efforts there so that it become a separate criminal offense. We started advocating this, and through the advocacy, we received the support of the Women's Network of Croatia, the Women's Lobby of Slovenia, then the representatives of the EU Parliament. Specifically, we were called by somebody important with regard to the gender-based violence, so that femicide be introduced, the initiative be supported, and this was really a great support. We had a synergy established among the citizens and us, the activists for the protection of women's and human rights. What is especially important is that although we have a specific situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that many citizens have lost trust that citizens' activism can change the situation, this campaign was a proof that we could succeed. First, the federal minister of justice said that femicide will not be regulated. That is to say, he refused our initiative, which did not discourage us. On the contrary, we were encouraged more to advocate stronger. So through the meetings with the MPs from the federal parliament and through the scientific meeting that with, namely the minister claimed that profession and science do not support the introduction of femicide. So we organized this event with the professors, the experts who explain why it is important to introduce femicide as a separate crime, how it can be proven, and all these conclusions from our expert meeting. I must say here that the committee for the gender equality of the parliament was our ally in the complete process. So we managed to convince through quality arguments the public and the representatives of the parliament. On January 15, we had a meeting in Sarajevo where we developed a text of the amendment to the criminal code, and all the parties accepted this text of the amendment. Thereafter, a decision should be made about in the parliament, but the minister withdrew the proposed text, but publicly he said that femicide will be incorporated in the new text of the law that they will propose. What we are currently active most is because we are in a situation, again, in a very difficult moment, because the law is lingering somewhere. It's again returned to the federal ministry. There is no parliamentary procedure. We are fighting for the return of the law to the parliamentary procedure. So we initiated the online collection of signatures. Also for on 8th of March, we are going to have a campaign where through the malls of Bosnia and Herzegovina, there will be a representatives. We have the support of Group Bingo. We are going to collect signatures, and we expect a huge number of signatures. And through this pressure, we hope to go again to the Ministry of Justice so that the law is returned. Because, again, we had femicide, and we cannot afford to lose a single day to waiting the introduction of femicide, because the first base is that we cannot prevent this socially negative phenomenon. If you do not have a legal solution, it's difficult to prevent it. So you could see from the media the case, the punishment in the case was very low, and the excuse was, this is the law, I couldn't ask for higher punishment. The amendment, through this amendment, the sentence will be much higher, and the criminal policy will be developed, which will prevent femicide. What we are aware of is that despite this, we have, again, a very complex process of education of judicial positions, the police, the social centers, because still there is certain level of misunderstanding regarding the gender-based violence and thereby femicide. Regarding reporting, in certain cases, NGOs have identified that femicide could have been prevented, but if there was a responsible and professional approach of the institutions which led to femicide. I'd just like to point out also that the case of femicide, the murder of Nizama in Gradačac, led to the amendments to the Criminal Code of Croatia. Now we are in a situation that we amend the Criminal Code and we take over the Croatian definition. In our initiative trigger the process. I believe that in Montenegro there was a meeting. There also there are amendments initiated to the criminal code, and in Serbia. So I hope that the complete region will accept it, and that if nothing else, we are going to improve the legal norms quality and continue to work on the protection of women against murders. I try to be short for the sake of other colleagues. That would be it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Neira. We're gonna go back to Neira in the Q&A session as well. But now we can continue share your take on the violence against women and what actually is happening in Moldova, and what are you doing and what's your organization doing on it?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me well? Yes, okay.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for having been invited to this meeting. And I'm very happy to learn about the experience of my colleagues from the Balkans. And I'd like to greet everyone and thank you so much for all your work. It will be very hard to speak in 5 minutes about, or 70 minutes even, about what we are doing. Women's Law Center is a non-governmental organization that was established in 2009. I'm one of the founding members, currently the executive director, but there has been a pause in my function. I've had other colleagues being part of the leadership of the organization. The organization was established by women lawyers in response to the need to ensure access to justice to women victims of domestic violence. Moldova, unfortunately, is a country with endemic violence against women and domestic violence. And one of our surveys or representative surveys conducted by the National Bureau of Statistics showed that about 70% of women of Moldova suffer from one form of violence during the course of their lives. This is a huge, huge amount compared to Western European statistics, whereas of about 30%. This was in 2011. Unfortunately, since then, we didn't have any representative study done by the National Bureau of Statistics, and we are in 2025. So when we speak about gender budgeting, gender-sensitive budgeting, and the allocation of resources, this is very important also in the research of the phenomenon. So we started in 2009, and I had the great chance to be part of the expert group working on behalf of Moldova on the development of the Istanbul Convention. And I came in touch with amazing women advocates, which some of you probably know, that worked on the development of the convention. And they told me then that when they learned that I come from Moldova, they told me, oh, Angelina, you need 20 years for Moldova to establish a system where women will feel safe and their rights will be defended. And I said, no, we will start working and do as much as we can. So Women's Law Center started as women lawyers providing legal advice free of charge, legal advice and representation for women to go to court. In Moldova, in 2007, we had a new law to prevent and combat violence against women, which introduced protection orders, which was a completely new instrument for us. And women didn't know about it, judges didn't know about it. We basically, at the beginning, we had no protection orders at all issued, also because we didn't have procedures. And so we were both involved. We started from the need of representing women, but then we saw that the legislation is not okay because we had material law on domestic violence, but we didn't have procedural law. And that meant that we needed amendments to the Civil Procedure Code and Criminal Procedure Code. So we got involved also on the legislative review, and with the support of Women's Law Center, also the offense of domestic violence was introduced in 2010. So a criminal code was amended with our support as well. Then we continued to provide we call compatibility analysis reports, where we looked at the provisions of the Istanbul Convention with the national legislation, and we came up with certain provisions, amendments. We included, for example, sexual harassment, which was not provided as a form of violence against women. We provided for emergency protection orders. In Moldova, this instrument was introduced in 2016, and this is an instrument that the police can issue. It a little bit reflects the Austrian example. If you know, the police, upon responding to a case of domestic violence, goes to the place and issues emergency protection orders. So if we look at the statistics in Moldova, we have about 15,000 cases or calls to the police every year, of which we have about 5,000 emergency protection orders and about 800 protection orders issued by the courts. In 2019, we have also introduced, the Moldovan government introduced electronic monitoring system in cases of protection orders. So the majority of the protection orders are being electronically monitored. This, however, does not mean that they are observed. Although we have also advocated, and another amendment was introduced to the law, the violation of a protection order is also a crime according to the criminal law. So even though you have a protection order, even though you have monitoring, even though there is a crime, recognizing that a violation is, you can be jailed for this, about 65% of protection orders are being violated, unfortunately. I'm saying this because although there has been a lot of work and we are constantly monitoring implementation of the legislation, we still really really far from having a situation when every case of domestic violence is handled properly. I'd like to thank my colleague from Bosnia who spoke before me, and she addressed the issue of femicide. Unfortunately, this phenomenon is really huge in Europe as a whole. In Moldova, we became interested and started to study this back in 2017, 2018. And Women's Law Center has authored a national research or study on the phenomenon of femicide. This was the first time when we came with this concept. And let me tell you that a lot of people were actually mocking, why do we say femicide? We don't say manslaughter. I mean, in our language, it sounds a little bit different. So in a way, people were very, let's say, they were not very happy to hear the fact that we are talking about the killing of women. And this is when we talk about gendered understanding of legislation or gender blind legislation, which we all are, unfortunately, coming from the Soviet period when this was developed. But it's not just the legacy, it's in many countries. So last year in 2024, there was a killing of a young woman, 18 years old, pregnant in 6 months pregnancy. She was abducted, raped, and killed. This case shocked the public opinion, and overnight, Women's Law Center came up with a public appeal. Mira, you were saying about this public appeal. We made this public appeal immediately, and we called for the recognition of femicide in the national law. And but what I want to say is that how valuable is the work of civil society that raises this issue on constant basis. So I was saying that we started in 2017, 2019 to study this phenomenon, and later on, we were advocating with the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the Republic of Moldova for the establishment of Lethality Commission. I'm not sure if you are familiar with these bodies. We have studied some of the experiences in Australia and in the United States where they have lethality commissions. The lethality commissions examine the cases of domestic violence that ended up in murder. And basically, it's the criminal law actors come together and look into the merits of the case and try to address, try to understand what went wrong to improve the situation. So in 2022, the Lethality Commission was established by governmental decision under the leadership of the Minister of Internal Affairs and with the chair of Ministry of Social Protection, Ministry of Health. And we as Women's Law Center are members of this commission. We supported technically, of course, with the support of the donor community, also the we have UN Women, we had American support, we had Swedish support. I mean, nothing is done without budgets, going back to the budgets. So for 2 consecutive years, we are developing the, sorry, you cannot see very well. Okay, let me see if I can change this setting. Okay, so this is the fatality review report. You can access it on our website. I think we have it this year as well, translated in English. So this is the report that looks into the cases that ended up in the death or severe bodily damage of victims. And this is where we tackle as well cases where women were murdered. So this is for the first time where we looked at femicide, but femicide stemming from domestic violence cases, not the general concept of femicide. And this is huge already, that it is happening. Why is this huge? Because we have data which cannot be challenged. This data is collected by the Minister of Internal Affairs. We develop a questionnaire. You know, it's a lot of work put behind this report. But what we have established, and for example, now we know for sure how many women die in their homes. In 2023, we had 24 women. In 2024, we had 21 women. We are going to conduct a new report this year, and the commission analyzes what went wrong. We know who are the women victims. We know the fact that they have not been accessing services. We know that a lot of the women are ignored so for example, we had cases when the offender that killed the woman had been sanctioned and had been imprisoned for domestic violence several times. And upon return, he killed the woman. So going back to April 2024, when the case of femicide happened of the young woman, we made the appeal, and due to the support of the parliamentary group of women, we have a group of parliamentarians, women parliamentarians, they called public hearings. And in the public hearings, we made the appeal. We said that something needs to be done. We need to recognize it in the law. We need to due diligence. The case needs to be considered. We need the offender convicted. We need to have compensation. We need to change, the procedures. So we put all of it. And why did I make this story about the Lethality Commission? Because at the next meeting of the Lethality Commission, the deputy speaker of the parliament attended, and she said, we need to introduce it into the law. So they agreed. And it happened on the platform of that commission. So all this work that was done so many years brought fruit. Or yeah, it became obvious. So in June and July last year, the appeal was signed by more than 1,500 people. They signed it on our site. We made a public appeal on a special platform, and more than 120 civil society organizations signed. So the group was established under the Lethality Commission, and we worked on legislation. I must say that it was very hard because the definitions, we have the Vienna definition, and you know, the Istanbul Convention doesn't have a definition. We don't have very clear standards there. We don't have a lot of countries that have adopted legislation. There is a law in Belgium, you might know, that recognizes femicide, and there are some in Malta, in Cyprus, but it was not very clear how they do it. So what we managed to do, we had a comprehensive draft introducing amendments to criminal law. The Ministry of Justice did not support it, exactly as Neera was saying, that there's a lot of opposition from the legal professionals, because they, you know, they look at murder in a neutral way. And they don't see why it is necessary to have an understanding and to prosecute actually femicide and have it regulated under the law. So what we managed to accomplish is the amendment of law, Law 45, Law on Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, and we introduced the definition of femicide in that law, with the obligation that the national authorities will bring in accordance the legislation with that provision. So now what is happening, we have worked on a new report of compatibility based on Grevio recommendations on the baseline review from 2023. So we have several provisions that need to be changed. For example, one of the examples is violence on the digital dimension, which this in Moldova is not regulated. So we introduced many elements, but we also introduced the amendments to the criminal code to recognize femicide. So if, and now there is a draft, it is in consultation process. We will see what happens. I'm not sure it will be supported by the Ministry of Justice and Ministry of Internal Affairs, finally. But the good thing is that we have recognized the definition of, so the notion of femicide in the law.
Yeah.
So it's there. So we are saying that we have a crack in the window. Now we need the political will and the commitment to go further and to introduce it actually in the criminal code. And this is where we are at this moment with the situation on femicide. There would be other things.
Thank you so much, Angelina.
Yes,
this was very, very useful, I think. Yeah, we will discuss it in the Q&A. I think have everyone speak for a bit on their specific context, and hopefully, I mean, it will not last long. So we plan on having Biljana next, but Anna is asking if she can go next, because she'll have to leave a bit earlier than planned and then get back for the Q&A probably. So Anna, the floor is yours, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Mersiha. I will share my screen because I would like you to see everything we have been doing in the field of gender equality and gender-based violence in the past years, due to the fact that we have been working with youth, and I think that it is very nice to actually see the results of our work. Just a second, the screen. Okay, there we go. So first of all, thank you for having me today. My name is Anna. As Mersiha mentioned, and I'm the program manager and project coordinator in the association AKA from Stuga. And I'm working with youth in the southwestern region for the past 8 years. In difference with what our colleagues mentioned until recently, we're not working in the field of lawmaking, but rather in the field of peer education. And through my years of working with young people, I have seen firsthand how gender stereotypes and discrimination actually take root very early, shaping their perspectives and also limiting their potential. I have spoken to young women who feel trapped by the expectations that diminish their ambitions, and young men who struggle with the rigid definitions of masculinity. So recently, I have noticed a resurgence in the traditionalist gender norms, and that means that young women are actually, again, put in a disadvantageous position and are fostering an environment where gender-based violence actually continues to persist. This is deeply concerning, and it calls for urgent preventive education.
Anna, sorry, could you please just slow down a bit for the interpreters, if that's
Yep,
okay with
sorry. Gender inequality and gender-based violence are not just abstract concepts. They manifest in everyday interactions, in the classroom, in the workplace, and within our homes. So they exist in the jokes that we hear, they exist in the expectations that are imposed on young people, in both boys and girls, and they also exist in the opportunities that are denied simply because of one's gender. And these injustices not only affect women and girls, but they harm us all as society, and they allow us to maintain a society where violence, oppression, and inequality actually thrive. So this is why preventive education is crucial, because by engaging young people in discussions about gender equality from an early age, we can challenge harmful discussions and norms before they become deeply ingrained in our mindsets. So education is not only about learning the facts, but rather it is also about shaping the attitudes, fostering critical thinking, and empowering individuals to stand up against injustice. At the Association for Development and Activism AKA from Stuga, we are committed to this cause, and our work in the peer education has actually proven to be a powerful tool in dismantling the gender-based stereotypes. And through interactive workshops, open discussions, and creative campaigns, we equip young people with the knowledge, but also the skills to recognize and challenge the gender discrimination and gender-based violence. By fostering peer-to-peer learning, we ensure that these messages actually resonate and are spread organically, creating a culture of awareness and accountability among the youth. Our commitment to gender equality has also been reinforced through our recent involvement with the Young Men Initiative, where we are implementing the programs M and Y in Ohrid, methodologies that are part of the project that we are working on together with the Center for Research and Policymaking. These programs actually emphasize the transformation of gender attitudes through education, discussion, and role modeling. The program M focuses on engaging young men in redefining masculinity and also promoting healthy relationships and preventing violence, especially accentuating the gender-based violence. And the program Y extends these principles to include both young men and women, creating an inclusive learning environment that where gender equality is actually a shared responsibility. The impact of these programs has been profound. Young men who have participated in the program M have reported increased awareness of toxic masculinity and a stronger commitment to nonviolent behaviors. Program Y has helped foster mutual respect and cooperation between young men and women, breaking down the traditional barriers and encouraging gender equality in all aspects of their lives. In fact, the group that began last January with the idea that women belong in the kitchen, or the idea that one slap is not considered a violence, actually grew and initiated a campaign to be implemented in their schools for battling these same norms. So this is actually an example, a successful example, and also a proof that preventive peer education can be fruitful and can really make a change. However, there is still much work to be done. In fact, gender inequality and gender-based violence are systemic issues that require collective action. And as educators, activists, policymakers, and members of society, we all have the role that we play in dismantling these harmful norms. So therefore, we must continue to invest in preventive education, support peer learning initiatives, and also create spaces where young people can challenge injustice without fear. So to the young people that are here today with us, and also to the young people that will be hearing this presentation, I have just one message. You are the future and you are the present. Your voices, your actions, and your willingness to challenge the status quo are what will bring about the change. Question the norms that you have been taught, stand up against injustice, and support one another in building a world where equality is actually not just an aspiration, but also a reality. I believe that together through education, awareness, but also action, we can break the cycle of gender inequality and gender-based violence. And I think that we need to stand united in our commitment for a more equal society, starting very early through the pillars of education and then continuing on, because education is the fundamental society. And if we start there, then we can have healthier generations that would bring about change, and that where gender inequality will not be tolerated and in any way encouraged. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your for following me. And I'm looking forward to the Q&A session and also to the presentations of the other speakers.
Thank you so much, Anna. I think this was right on time. It was exactly 5 minutes, which is very well planned presentation. Thank you for these inputs. It's also important to, as I mentioned in the beginning, some of you will offer us the legal perspectives and what's there to see with the laws and so on. But then we come to implementation in some cases, and then in your case, to education and actual norms and roles that are taken up by youth in our societies, and especially in smaller places like Ohrid and like Struga and so on. Thank you. So we're going to continue with Biljana, not to lose any time. Biljana, sorry for waiting. And I would love to invite you to share the Montenegrin perspective on violence against women and share what you have been working on lately.
Hvala puno I pozdrav.
Thank you very much and greetings to all. I'm very glad that I can participate in such a gathering, let me call it so. I am somebody who has been almost 30 years in a women's organization, specifically our organization. This month celebrates 28 years of activity, and suddenly it's called SOS Telephone for Women and Children Victims of Violence. But what characterizes our organization is that inside the organization, we developed a variety of programs. So in a way, practically, the SOS telephone is just one of the services that the organization provides. What we deal with for more than 20 years intensely are the services of support that we provide in terms of counseling, legal aid, psychological support. For some time, we also ran a crisis center for women with who have experienced women which, due to lack of resources, we had to close it last year. So everything, certainly monitoring the victims through the system. And I believe that this is a framework that is followed by other women's NGO. What is characteristic of our work is that for more than 20 years, we have been conducting education for a variety of target groups. So for the young citizens, women, and all the institutions that have the obligation to respond and be active in the process of supporting the victims, which means judges, prosecutors, police, social centers, healthcare sector, and others. Some of the key training courses that we conduct for them have been accredited. So regarding the motivation and active participation of our trainees, I can say that we don't have a problem. There's always a demand for one place more. For us, this is an encouragement, a hope maybe that things change and that people learn during the training courses, and also that the quality of the training courses is high. Certainly, in such case, people will have to want to attend. The third thing is public advocacy. We have been all the time involved in the development of primary and secondary legislation. So there is no document in Montenegro regarding violence against women where we did not make our contribution, active contribution, and some of these laws and bylaws, rule books, we initiated them. So logistically, through our good logistical skills, we managed to complete things for
na nivou vlade.
Aptitudinile logistice a reușit să fie adoptate la nivel cu pe parcursul discuțiilor vom avea posibilitatea să vorbim despre mai mult și despre latura legală. Vreau să vă prezint situația și
I na koji način se te usluge pružaju. Ono što je karakteristično
manner of provision. What is characteristic of Montenegro, and I believe many countries in the region, is that today the government is in a way, made us to license the services that we provide. And these are mainly accommodation services or maybe shelters for women and children victims of violence, counseling services, and counseling therapy services. Many organizations are involved in this story, and currently we have 5 licensed services. That is to say, organizations that have licensed accommodation services, and about 15 have licensed the service of counseling. As regards the government, and they took the obligation to fund the organizations when they're licensed. Here I can say that until this year, this was only part of the funds required for the provision of the services, and it was related to practically some 30%. The rest was funded by the donors. For the first time, simply let me present an example, because not everything is very good. For the first time this year, 4 organizations that have licensed services of accommodation for children and women victims of violence, they received everything that was necessary. This is the money, although there is a call open, published, rather this is planned funding, and it goes from the budget of the government. So this doesn't go through the project calls of the ministry or alike. Another problem is the position of the SOS telephones, that is to say the organizations and thereby the services. We have 9 SOS telephone organizations. In the meantime, 3 already went out of job due to the lack of funds. We have 1 national SOS line in Montenegro, which is also funded from the government country's budget, not through projects. On the one hand, this was good, convenient to know that there is at least 1 organization that can provide this type of service. But the problem is that this type of service is demanded by women everywhere in Montenegro. One of the key tasks at the national SOS line and all other SOS lines is that this is not just to inform the victims by phone, and this is actually written in the description of the service. We also must provide psychological support, monitoring through the institution of the system, legal aid, counseling, etc. And then we have a situation, certainly, of referral. It's of key importance, bearing in mind that all calls are go to one point. The calls from other cities where there are phones or organizations that are called SOS phones, they are referred to those organizations. And these colleagues from the other cities that undertake the provision of the service. The task of the SOS phones, okay, the fund, we have not received any cent from, not only from the government, but even a more worrying fact is that we did not receive anything from the municipalities. They just say that there's a national line and they do not need to spend money for local organizations. So these organizations are literally brought into a situation or level of sustainability where everybody waits to extinguish. Even not any one of these organizations, they don't have their premises, they use their homes or victims' premises, and etc. This is a very serious problem in Montenegro, and I don't know how we are going to resolve this. We just have one organization, they say the SOS phone in Ulcin, which was has been funded from its establishment by Prostor, which is very important, bearing in mind that all us members of SOS Telephone have learned that we work voluntarily in providing of services. So it's very important to have some room, space, and don't think about where you will talk about with this client and at what time. In a way, this is a picture which is not good at all regarding SOS telephones in Montenegro, because these are organizations that operate for more than 20 years, and you have a problem that they are faced with such a situation. The other thing that endangers, jeopardizes the women's sector dealing with the victims of violence is the funding method introduced by the ministries. We have this strategy of the issues of gender equality, which is in the last strategy. Now a new one has been developed. Two key areas have been excluded from it. The issue of gender-based violence. The explanation of the government was that everything regarding violence against women will be included into the strategy for the implementation of the Istanbul Convention, which was recently adopted, although there were information that it had been adopted 4 years ago, but okay. And what happened last year at the level of the Ministry of Labor and Social Welfare, there was a line which funded the organizations dealing with victims of violence, and the total sum was about 400 to 450,000 euros. And the amount of the project was up to 35,000 euros. That last year, this amount was reduced. Be careful, please. We adopted the Istanbul Convention. Everything about violence is in the strategy, and the role of the ministry is to support these activities. Still, the budget was reduced to 150,000, and the maximum grant amount was 12,000. This automatically meant that no service, let alone the provision of services, could not take funds from the budget, because the funding went to counseling in the past, but unfortunately it's not funded anymore. So the question is, we don't know what will happen. It's important to say that mainly all the organizations dealing with the protection of women against violence are licensed, because the government has undertook the commitment to fund all the licensed organizations. I had an opportunity at the parliament last year to ask the then minister when the counseling service, licensed counseling services will be funded from the budget. The response was, the answer was that they could not do it that year, because in that period they established the price of the service, of the counseling services per hour. And I believe that I will finish my presentation with this information. Please warn me, because this is a very painful story. to my question, what is the price of counseling services? The answer was that the government had adopted the price for counseling services per 1 hour for one client in the amount of €2.85. The mathematics is not my best area, but during the session of the parliament, I calculated that a psychologist or a sociologist, if she worked 8 hours without breaks with 8 clients, her income would be €480. From this amount, she could not even provide for her own salary. And certainly, it's not 450. It was a long time ago. And the minimum salaries wages are more than €900, and that must be secured. I believe that this information is enough for you to understand our justifiable fear that in Montenegro we have such a socio-political situation where we was tried backwards instead of forward regarding the violence against women. I hope that I did not exceed the time.
So much, Biljana. Now we've seen the different perspectives, as I mentioned, with Anna's speech or with Anna's address, but now we see the reality of the persons working on the front lines with the victims of violence against women. And the reality is sad, and I don't think that there's how to say it. I don't think there are a lot of differences in our countries. At least, like when I was listening to you, at least Montenegrin government has done the costing, has conducted the costing exercise of those. I mean, it's very bad, but at least there's someone that actually does that, and you've pressured them enough. For us, we don't even have the official costing and so on. But we will go back to that when we get to the Q&A. I think it's going to be very interesting, but I'd love to invite Eli to present I think a positive story from Kosovo, a positive advocacy story from Kosovo, and we're going to finish off with the more positive attitude. But then we're going to go back to Q&A and discuss this in more detail.
Can you hear me?
Go on.
I'm going to share first something about Kosovo Women's Network, or KWN. Kosovo Women's Network has 142 members, which work mainly on gender equality. And something that we have done like for years now is we send budget recommendations to the government and also municipalities to include gender responsive budgeting into their annual budgets. Kosovo, I will share just like main points that we have done, so I will not take a lot of time, I think. We have advocated for the inclusion of a budget line in the state budget for shelter services since 2018. And one of the positive things that happened is that this budget line was established for the first time in 2019 with a budget of €880,000, and over the years this budget has increased, which reached 2.5 million in 2025. So our advocacy, along with our members also including advocates for shelters, has resulted in a 184% increase in the budget from 2029 to 2025. And also this year, the Ministry of Internal Affairs has allocated a budget for electronic monitoring, even though the law for electronic monitoring existed in Kosovo since 2015, but unfortunately, this law was never implemented. We don't know yet how much money they have allocated for the electronic monitoring, but we're waiting to see in the future what they have already allocated for the budget. And something that is important to mention is that This will help the victims that have protection orders, as in Kosovo we have some cases, even though the victim, someone that actually is a victim of gender-based violence, had a protection order, but even though the protection order existed, there was also cases of femicide. And something that maybe you can share, what I could share, is that together with AWEN, we will publish a research study on the cost of shelter services in Albania using a methodology that KWN has developed. KWN has actually a research, I don't know if you can see it, is for the at what costs, which tells the budgeting for the implementation of the legal framework against violence in Kosovo. And also there is a regional partnership in the Western Balkans, which is planning research on the cost of services in each country. And I think it will be conducted this year or early next year. And the goal of this partnership is to informal national budget in the Western Balkans on how much it costs the services for the shelters and what they need to include in their budget lines. Something we also do is that we have our gender-based violence team. They advocate continually for violence against women and girls. We also monitor cases in courts, and we offer free legal aid. We also have some recommendations that we have sent, but we still haven't received any positive impact. I would say one of them is we recommended to allocate adequate resources for a rape crisis center, treatment for survivors of sexual violence, also an SOS hotline as per the Istanbul Conventions. Unfortunately, in Kosovo, we don't have an SOS hotline. The Ministry of Justice has started on working on a regulation, but we don't know yet that how much money they have allocated for it or when it will be done, as in February we had elections, so we don't have the new government yet. And we also have recommended to allocate an additional of 444,000 annually fund for social workers in 38 municipalities in Kosovo. But as 2 additional social workers that will be in 37 municipalities and 4 in Pristina, as Pristina is the biggest municipality. Also, these social workers will work more in supporting gender-based violence cases, including sexual and domestic violence. So this is what we have done in Kosovo. Like, if you have any question, we can also talk during our Q&A.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Thank you so much. And I'm very glad that there's positive move towards better policies or better budgets in this sense, to see also that perspective. I'd like to ask if there's anyone from Serbia or Albania that wants to talk a bit more on the issues in their country that you haven't mentioned for Albania right now, Ellie. Is there anyone?
Yeah, I can talk more for
Bessie?
Albania,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, go on.
So first of all, let me present myself. I'm Besiana Husa, and I'm the Gender Budget Watchdog Network coordinator for Albania. And I work for Gender Alliance for Development Center, that is an organization established in 1995 in Albania. So this year we will turn 30. And the GDC mission has been promoting gender equality and tackle gender-based violence and violence against women and
Please
girls.
slow down, Bessie.
Sorry, I know I talk too fast, sorry. And violence against women and girls in Albania. So we have been focused in different areas related with women empowerment, and particularly those in vulnerable situations. So GDC has contributed in significant legislative changes during the years, as advocated for policy aligning with international standards like the Istanbul Convention, and also has promoted the integration of gender-responsive budget at both local and central government levels. Now, I'm not going to be very, very long at GDC, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the situation in Albania. So a significant portion of women in Albania...
Slower.
Again, still not that slow, sorry. So a significant portion of women in Albania continue to face gender-based violence, with statistics that show that 1 in 3 women is a victim of some kind of violence in Albania. Additionally, 18% of women who have experienced physical and sexual violence have also faced domestic violence. And with the technology advancing, now we have another new component, that is online harassment, that 41.1% of women and girls in Albania report experiences of online stalking and abuse. Now, women survivors of gender-based violence face serious social and economic barriers that prevent them from leaving the abuse situation and the relationship in their lives. And also know that Eli mentioned prior the protection orders, that also in Albania protection orders don't really function because even if they have a protection order, if they still continue to live in the same area, in the same home, it's not normal, it's not effective. And also, we have shelters in Albania, and the government, that is a positive approach, has in 2023 allocated to the 2024 allocated like 240,000 euros, but that's for 61 municipalities that are in Albania, but allocated to shelters and NGO running shelters, not state shelters. But if you can calculate a little bit, you can understand that that's very small amount if you divide in each shelter. This money are allocated for to support staff salaries in these shelters. What else? But still, the shelters, even though with this money, the shelters depend on short-term donors funds. Okay, and most of these shelters are positioned in urban areas. So if you are living in a rural part, then we are leaving this women that outside of the protection part, so they can have and usually in this part the mentality and the abuse is even bigger. Also, you know, now what else I can also staying to the shelters. After the rehabilitation in the centers, we don't have long-term housing solutions. And I think, I don't know if in any other of the countries in Balkans, does this long-term housing solutions still apply or are somewhere? But in Albania, they don't exist. And the rehabilitation and reintegration process of survivors is becoming very difficult, because it's very difficult to reintegrate these girls and women in jobs, in finding homes, and being economical independent from their families, so they cannot return to the situation that they were prior. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I think
there's
this.
I think it's similar across the region.
Yeah, I think is similar, but as I'm trying to remember what and to see the notes what I wrote, that it was not mentioned, because most of the other parts are mentioned also from the others. The situation is almost the same. We are depending on donor funds, and we have a lot of implementation challenges also for the shelters and also for the legislation.
Yeah, thank you so much,
yeah.
Betsy.
Welcome.
Thank you for providing us also that perspective. Is there anyone from Serbia who'd like to share anything on Serbia? I don't see anyone that I know is from Serbia, but okay, if there's anyone that wants to share it, feel free to. Okay, so Are there any questions, or should I go to the questions that I've prepared for the speakers? Is there anyone who wants to ask something? I don't see hands that are raised or anything. You can always write it in the chat as well. I really wanted to go back to everyone, perhaps all of the speakers that are still here. So a lot of you have mentioned safe houses, and we have conducted a research a couple of years back. I think Ellie mentioned it, the research on SOS helplines funding, which is in most of our country, it's led by organizations, and also Biljana mentioned the issue of providing therapeutic services and so on. I wanted to ask you if you know the situation in your countries. What are the key challenges in actually ensuring the stable funding and accessibility of the services of safe houses in your countries, for those of you who haven't mentioned it? I didn't hear, I think, from Anna, if Anna knows anything about it in Macedonian context. Ellie has sort of touched upon it, but you can also mention the situation, because all of the safe houses in Kosovo, right, are led by NGOs, but the government finances the safe houses. Ellie, is it?
Yeah, in Kosovo there are 11 shelters. 10 of them are NGOs. One of them is owned by the state. The one that is owned by the state is with a maximum security, as is for the victims of trafficking. And the others, 9 of them are for women and children, and one of them is only for children.
Okay. Okay.
For Macedonia, the situation is similar. There are some of them co-owned by both the Ministry of Social Affairs as well as non-governmental organizations that are running them. But at the same time, we are experiencing the situation where there are no safe houses, for instance, in the southwestern region where we work in, but also none of them are in the east-western region, southeastern region, sorry. Therefore, they are in the territory of Skopje, then Tetovo, I believe Kumanovo, but I'm not sure about Kumanovo. But we do, and Bitola as well, but we do need more expansion of them in order for them to be available as a resource and also as a place for women to go, because not having the availability of safe houses actually discourages women to stand up against violence, especially violence that happens within the family.
Thank you so much. Neira, do you want to go?
Evo, samo bi ja kratko informirala. Kod nas je zakon o zaštiti nasilja u porodici prošao prvi dom našeg federalnog parlamenta i trebao bi da bude uskoro usvojen u drugom domu. Tim zakonom uvedene su izmjene da se sigurne kuće financiraju procentualno, znači sa nivoa federacije, kantona i općine, s tim da najveći teret opet pada na federaciju, i s time bi se financiranje sigurnih kuća konačno trebalo regulirati i riješiti da ne bude neizvjesno.
Dobro. Biljana, vi želite dodati još nešto? Može. Sad imamo vremena malo.
Pa ja ću dodati nešto što će možda vama djelovati neobično, ali mi u ovom momentu, kad kažem mi, mislim na generacije feministkinja koje se već decenijama bave zaštitom žena od nasilja, smo prilično zabrinute da licenciranje usluga, posebno kada su skloništa u pitanju, nas vodi u jedan drugi problem, a to je jedan svojevrstan vid birokratizacije ili ti da ne kažem jednostavno otvaranja jednog novog biznis sektora. Jer da biste dobili licencu i da biste dobili novac od države za rad u skloništu, ne postoji ni jedan jedini uslov da osobe koje su tu zapošljene su ikada radile sa ženama žrtvama nasilja. Tako da kod nas praktično je došlo do jedne svojevrsne, mogu reći, ekspanzije osnivanja skloništa, I to nas, jer mi smo mala zemlja, poznajemo se svi između sebe, znamo ko šta radi, nas jako brine činjenica da je dovoljno da vi ispunite one formalne uslove, a to je da ćete angažovati par osoba koji imaju licencu za rad u socijalnoj zaštiti i dječjoj zaštiti, a da ta licenca ne podrazumijeva iskustvo u radu sa žrtvama. I bojimo se da će to, jer već vidimo neke negativne rezultate, da će to uticati na kvalitet zaštite žrtava. Jer ne možete očekivati da neko ko nikada nije radio sa žrtvama nasilja, zna sve tehnike, sve principe rada i svaka od vas odlično zna koliko je to jedan kompleksan proces osnaživanja kroz koje prolazi žena, jer stvaranje slike da je uloga skloništa da žene i djeca imaju krov nad glavom i da imaju šta da jedu je nešto što nas užasava, što se potpuno zaboravlja taj moment osnaživanja koji je neophodan. Jer u svakom skloništu ta žena mora da ima apsolutnu podršku i to je jedan ogromni posao, zahtjevan zadatak, između ostalog i bavljenje njenom budućom egzistencijom. Kod nas u Crnoj Gori je godinu dana period koliko žena može da ostane u skloništu i nakon toga dobije neku određenu pomoć, nešto, ali tih godinu dana moraju da posluže ne samo ženama iz skloništa, one će biti inicijatori, mislim na one koje su angažovane, nego i državi da se toj ženi kada izađe odatle obezbijede bolji uslovi za rad. To je nešto čega se mi u poslednje vrijeme zaista plašimo, jer vi odlično znate kada na kraju krajeva svaka od vas ima iskustva u radu institucija sistema. Kako oni funkcionišu, koliko nisu edukovani, koliko nemaju kapaciteta za rad sa žrtvama nasilja. I onda kada dobijete sklonište u kom vam je neko zaposlen, a svi zaposleni negdje u državnim organima, neko vam je zaposlen u ministarstvu neko u nekoj državnoj ustanovi, a svi nešto na pola radnog vremena, tu se postavlja pitanje efikasnosti rada. Ali taj valjda moment da država da Crna Gora trenutno, znači obezbeđuje iz državnog budžeta skloništa, onda je to jedna svojevrsna sigurnost da ćete imati plate za osoblje i sve, da ne razmišljate o momentu održivosti. Bojim se da će ih biti sve više. Mi trenutno imamo u jednom gradu dva skloništa i to sa onako dobrim kapacitetima. Tako da, eto, to sam, kada su skloništa u pitanju, imala potrebe da podijelim sa vama, a s druge strane, kada je usluga savjetovanja u pitanju, jer smo stalno u komunikaciji, inače u Crnoj Gori imamo mrežu ženskih organizacija koja se bavi isključivo upravo lobiranjem i javnim zastupanjem. Znamo šta se dešava, jer smo stalno u komunikaciji, sve veći broj ženskih organizacija vraćaju, praktično odbijaju licencu, obaveštavaju ministarstvo da su prekinule sa radom, jer u bilo kom momentu inspekcija ako vam dođe, a vi nemate zaposlene, nije problem što će vam uzeti licencu, nego što ćete dobiti velike kazne. A upravo one organizacije, to je nešto što smo mi nazvali institucionalnim nasiljem. Vjerujte, inspekcije rada, to jest inspekcija koja je poseban organ na nivou Ministarstva rada i socijalnog staranja, ja ga i tako zovem, iako je promijenilo naziv, nema veze, vrlo su revnosni kada su kontrole u pitanju i te kontrole su u najvećoj mjeri bile neosnovane i dovedeni su u situaciju da svaki počinioc nasilja koji se žali, da ne zamislite, počinioc nasilja se žali jer mu u skloništu ne dozvoljavaju da gleda djecu, a ima zabranu prilaska. Ali to apsolutno inspekciji ne smeta da dođe, jer nije to to je užasno naporno, jer te inspekcijske kontrole traju danima. Oni budu po cijelo radno vrijeme tu, pa gledaju svaki papir, pa sve živo prekontrolišu i na kraju nije nama ništa olakšavajuće to što oni ne nađu nikakvu grešku. Kad oni nama oduzmu energiju, nerve, a već znate kako to ide kad to mediji objave. kad mediji objave, inspekcija je došla u sklonište neko i onda se to u javnosti, ko zna šta te žene tamo u skloništu rade. Eto to, kad su sklonište u pitanju, to sam imala potrebu da kažem.
Yes, Biljana, I think you have made great points, and sort of with this short discussion, we've answered some of the questions that I already had ready, and it was to identify some biggest, I think not biggest challenges, but the biggest room for improvement. I think I called it like that, room for improvement or reforms in this sense, because you've through your addresses today at our community session, all of you have identified some things. I want you to add something if needed. So there's the lack of capacities among institutions to actually work in this sense. There's the lack of cost analysis in all of our countries. I think there's no right cost analysis that's conducted, and even where there is, as Biljana has said, it's 1 hour of work and 2.85 euros of payment for professional services in this sense. There's no cost analysis. There's a lack of education among citizens in general on these issues, and it's sort of changing the system starts with the education from the young age, as Anna has said. There's the bureaucratization of the safe houses, or safe house services that Biljana has mentioned. So bureaucracy is something that also works bad. And then there's just the lack of interest of those who actually make the decisions in the end in changing the things, as Neira has outlined for our specific situation, where there is a strong backlash against the organizations that are working in these fields, because it's considered something not very appropriate for our context, I assume. I also wanted to ask you if we think about funding for in these instances, to go back to sort of do a brief update on what was happening a couple of years back with the research that I have mentioned of Istanbul Convention. Says that SOS helplines should be funded, and then we have the funded SOS helplines on state levels, which are free of charge and so on, which is fine. However, the organizations don't get the funding for those who are employed on the SOS helplines, so they do the work voluntarily. Biljana has mentioned it, Neira has mentioned it, Anna has also mentioned a lot of voluntary efforts. Eli, I know the situation is a bit different in Kosovo, right?
We don't have an SOS hotline.
Yeah. It doesn't exist. The state free of charge one doesn't exist. Okay.
It is one, but it's not mainly for gender-based violence. It's all for all the crimes that happen. So
like the police numbers. Yeah. Okay. So for us who have it, I know for a fact that the organizations that have their SOS helplines, which are also active, but also organizations that work on the official governmental SOS helplines. So we have two, one in Republika Srpska and one in Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which are operated by NGOs, but the NGOs work voluntarily for them 24/7. Someone's available on those helplines. Without any support from the government or from the budgets. And the budgets for safe houses in Bosnia are very low. For Federation of Bosnia, it's, I think, different levels of government award them differently. In Republika Srpska, it's even on the lower level, so it's on the city or municipality level, which is even less money for operating everything. So as Biljana has said, Montenegro has 1 year of a person stay in the safe house. So a person can stay in the safe house for 1 year. I think, Neira, please correct me if I'm wrong. In Bosnia, it's usually 6 months officially, but we don't have the money, so it's minimized to 3 months, right? 3 mjeseca, usually.
6 mjeseci je kod nas
6 prema
prema rješenju
zakonu.
centra sada.
Yes.
Da.
But it's usually like in some safe houses, the lack of funding actually leads to them having to go back outside. Yeah, Neira, go on.
Ako mogu samo samo dodati, znači ono što je kod nas trenutno situacija kada je riječ o ovom zaštiti nasilja žena u porodici, izmijenjeni zakon uvodi određene novine kao što je elektronska nanognica i niz drugih stvari koje bi trebalo da budu, kao što je kolegica rekla, da bude krivično djelo ukoliko ne poštujete zaštitnu mjeru i tako dalje. Međutim, nevladine organizacije su uočile da naše institucije uopšte nemaju kapacitet. Sada ćemo imati situaciju da će...
Ne čujete.
Imat ćemo situaciju da će zakon da stupi na snagu, a policija i druge institucije nemaju uopšte kapaciteta i nastaće sad određeni haos, kako će se sprovoditi zakon, kako će se implementirati. Mislim, strašno da država uopšte o tome nije razmišljala. U situaciju u kojoj će sad naći žene žrtve, i prosto ne znam kako ćemo mi na to da odgovorimo.
Jel mogu? Vidim da se često pominje elektronski nadzor nad praćenjem mjera zabrane prilaska. Mislim da ne znam, možda nemam pravu informaciju, ali što se tiče regiona, čini mi se da Crna Gora trenutno jedino ima uspostavljen elektronski nadzor putem nanogice, ali u krivičnim dijelima nasilja u porodici, što dosta otežava situaciju jer krivični postupci traju jako dugo, a zaštitna mjera stupa na snagu danom pravosnažnosti presude. Ali u svakom slučaju iskustva su izuzetno pozitivna. Ono na čemu mi trenutno radimo i insistiramo jeste da se taj sistem uvede i kroz prekršajni zakon. Međutim, tu imamo mnogo veći broj, neuporedivo veći broj izrečenih mjera zabrane prilaska i to će biti jedan ogroman finansijski izdatak za državu. Moram da kažem da ni u Crnoj Gori se ne bi ovo uvelo. Vjerujte da Global Fond za žene nije finansirao taj program, jer sva ta aparatura, sistem praćenja i sve ostalo košta jako puno i ono što je za sada model u Crnoj Gori da praćenje kada je elektronski nadzor u pitanju vrši tim u Ministarstvu pravde. Onog momenta kada država uspije da obezbijedi sredstva da to radi policija, jer postoji taj model u nekim državama, onda naravno to zahtijeva policijske timove, to više ne može da radi jedan ili dva inspektora i to iziskuje ogromna finansijska sredstva i zato smo vrlo skeptični kada će to stupiti na snagu, jer vi odlično znate da sve što treba, za šta god treba država da izvuče pare iz džepa, s tim se stagnira. Ono što bih ja imala potrebu još da kažem jeste da nas brine odnos donatora prema uopšte ovoj problematici i problematici nasilja. Sve je manje donatora koji finansiraju, posebno usluge, a to je upravo ono što mi radimo, a država ne radi. Ono što nas takođe brine već par godina i nekako nam je bilo potpuno neprihvatljivo, a prosto me ekipa koja je trenutno ovdje asocirala da to pomenem, recimo vi imali smo ranijih godina sjajnu mogućnost i razmjene iskustava i međudržavne saradnje kroz programe prekogranične saradnje, iz kojih su zadnjih par godina potpuno isključena pitanja socijalne politike, socijalne zaštite u bilo kom obliku. I vi sada imate očuvanje kulturne baštine, ekologiju, to su neke ključne stvari, a upravo ono što vezuje ljude, a to su ljudska prava, isključeno iz tih programa. Znači, a onda se polako nekako i drugi donatori vode sa tim, što dodatno, s obzirom da država ne finansira u odgovarajućoj mjeri, dodatno ugrožava onda organizaciji. Kod nas recimo je princip sada Evropske komisije, koja nam je bila šansa, jer smo kroz Evropsku komisiju u Crnoj Gori imali šansu da dobijemo višegodišnje projekte sa ozbiljnim iznosima koji su mogli da pokriju naše troškove. Oni su uveli takozvani sistem decentralizacije, a to znači da se jednoj organizaciji nevladinoj da par miliona, a onda ta organizacija dijeli sredstva nevladinim organizacijama. Što ne bi bio problem da sada ti grantovi nisu kao grantovi koji su bili kod Evropske komisije po 100.000 eura, 150, 170, nego su to grantovi sa najviše 15.000 eura. Tako da tim sistemom Evropske komisije sada kod nas, organizacije koje su se tretirale kao razvijene, one su pale čak i ispod one skale srednje razvijenih organizacija. I onda ste vi prinuđeni da radite po 15 projekata od po 10, 12, 15.000, što užasno iscrpljuje članice organizacije, a onemogućeni ste da dobijete neki veći grant. I ono što vidim i kada su regionalni projekti u pitanju, rijetko nalazim na pitanja rodne ravnopravnosti i pitanja nasilja na ženama i onda znate kad nam stigne obavijest, mi je sve srećna, jao super, sad bi mogli da apliciramo, pogledate, nigdje nema rodne ravnopravnosti, a svi su se obavezali, evo ja sad nakačila sam se na Evropsku komisiju, nažalost sve je manje i drugih organizacija koje to finansiraju, tako da kada su ženske organizacije u pitanju i njihov opstanak, a samim tim podrška žrtvama, moram da vam kažem da je situacija krajnje ozbiljna. Pomenuli ste obuke, pomenuli ste koliko je važno da ljudi u institucijama, a ja sam to pomenula, imaju informacije, vjerujte, nikada nam teže nije bilo nego poslednjih par godina da obezbedimo sredstva da nam donatori odobre da ti ljudi prođu obuku. Eto, jedino imamo sreću što nas često Zavod za socijalnu i dječju zaštitu, kod kojih inače licenciramo, to jest akreditujemo programe obuke, oni nas pozivaju da radimo za njih, ali ciljna grupa su samo socijalni radnici. Ostali nisu. Tako da to sam morala da negdje iznesem, da možda bi bila dobra jedna od preporuka da donatori koji su obavezni, znate, ja gledam projekte gdje nigdje nema rodne ravnopravnosti, a kada pogledate način kako se boduju projekti, kako se odlučuje o njima, onda obavezno
Yes, there's the gender equality component.
Jeste, odmah rodna komponenta. Ne znam samo kako.
Yes, thank you so much for these insights. I'm gonna end on a positive note. I'm gonna insult the context. I'm just gonna say that it's challenging. I'm not gonna say anything worse. Maybe it's a moment for all of us different things.
Ne čujemo te dobro, Mirsiha.
It is
Prekida se.
obliged to actually fund it. Sorry, can you hear me now?
I think now
There's
it's
something
fine.
wrong with the internet. But since the state should fund these initiatives to actually fund it, because they do get IPA and they still do get money from big donors and they get the big money. Maybe we can work on that together. And on the other hand, maybe we could also set a sort of a roadmap towards this. But I think Ellie and the team from Kosovo Women's Network related to funding and
Nancy,
so
we
on.
lost you again.
So maybe we can keep us in the loop. Sorry, there's something wrong with our internet the whole day. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe we could work on this together, wouldn't be bad. And Ellie, maybe you can share some things if there's something to share regarding regional approach to these issues.
I would say we can also talk with our manager for gender-based violence. She couldn't join today. There is a partnership that will do a research on the cost for services, for shelter services, and it will be for all the Western Balkans countries. And that will be done, I think, at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. I'm not sure what time, but I can share her email. So if anyone wants to contact with her, they can just send an email to her directly for more information. When it comes to the budgeting in Kosovo, the budget comes from the state, and the donors usually they have like very small budget, as the main budget is the state. And I think something that would be good would be also harmonizing between local and central level, as also municipalities needs to have like a budget line for these shelters. I mean, in Kosovo, some of them have, but not all of them.
Yeah, it would be good to sort of, I mean, for Bosnia, it would be very hard. We have the system that has 14 ministries of everything that you can imagine. So 14 ministries of finance, 14 ministries of, and we don't have 14 ministries of justice at least. But yeah, anyways, we have a lot of ministries. It would be hard, but it would be good to to track. Actually, one of the questions that I wanted to pose, but we somehow touched upon it, was, are there quality mechanisms of tracking the funding for fighting gender-based violence or violence against women and girls? That's the thing, because if they're in some countries, it's allocated from the central level and specific allocations go from lower levels. There's an option to track it, but this way there's no option to actually track what goes in, and then somehow it gets lost in the, we get lost the track of the money, and we should follow it very closely. So it would be good to maybe follow all of the allocations that go even into those state-owned safe houses and so on. So are there any questions from the audience? I don't see any hands raised, but I don't know if everyone has the option to raise hands. I think so. Yeah, Biljana? Mutani ste. Mutani ste, Biljana. Ne može, morat ćete se, eto.
Što se tiče Crne Gore, to je jednostavno uraditi, zato što samim dobijanjem licence i predajom dokumentacije za sredstva, tačno se zna koja stavka može biti finansirana. I to su uglavnom zaposleni u sigurnim kućama i režijski troškovi, što uključuje i rentu. Tako da zna se tačno godišnji budžet od države, jer kod nas samo postoji jedna, i to javna ustanova na lokalnom nivou koju je opština osnovala, a ostalo, tu je već teško pratiti, tu se može zora ne zna. Tako da što se skloništa tiče, lako je ispratiti koji je to trošak. Meni se čini da bi bilo dobro napraviti, ajde, nebitno kako će nazvati, ili procjena neka, koštanja, recimo, usluga SOS telefona. Zato što se to što mi volonterski pružamo toliki, jer nije to samo se javite na telefon, nego znate šta sve ta usluga podrazumijeva, imam utisak da se čak i omalovažava. Ne vrednuje se. Ne vrednuje se to kao vaš doprinos. Ne vrednuje vam se ni ako pišete projekat, pa u budžetu kažete doprinos je...
Niko donatora.
Niko. Znači, da napišete doprinos organizacije je procijenjeni neki iznos, koliko to otprilike košta, pa da se makar tu to tretira kao doprinos. Znači, mislim da bi bilo dobro, jer to bi bio dobar argument kad vi imate tačno izračunate troškove, koji bi bili realni troškovi za jedan SOS telefon 24/7, onda imate argument i da lobirate i da dignete glas i da dovedete do neke promjene. Mislim da bi to bilo jako, jako važno. A što se tiče uopšte, ne znam kako je kod vas u drugim državama, kada je u pitanju, u stvari kada je pitanje kuda ide novac za nasilje nad ženama, u Crnoj Gori je katastrofa. Evo zašto je katastrofa, zato što vi sada imate organizacije koje su promijenile svoje statute i u tim svojim statutima su naveli sve moguće i nemoguće, od ekologije, ekonomije, održivog razvoja, rodne ravnopravnosti, nasilja i tako dalje. I to je jedna grupa organizacija koja su se dobro uvezali, imaju nekoga koji piše projekat i mi imamo situaciju da recimo od 20 projekata koje se odobre na nivou recimo Ministarstva za ljudska i manjinska prava, evo da njih uzmemo u obzir, da samo 3 organizacije koje se stvarno bave nasiljem na ženama ili pitanjima rodne ravnopravnosti dobiju sredstva, a ostalo su sve organizacije koje se nikada time nisu bavile, a ono što je najviše zabrinjavajuće, a vezano je za vaše pitanje monitoringa, jer mi treba da znamo kud idu pare, nijedno ministarstvo ne vrši monitoring projekata koje finansira. Nažalost, čak ni finansijski. I onda mi imamo organizacije koje godinama uopšte nisu opravdale sredstva iz prethodnog projekta, a uredno dobijaju sledeće. To bi bilo takođe interesantno, makar što se Crne Gore tiče, ispratiti i naravno uraditi neku vrstu monitoringa. Šta su te organizacije uradile za novac koji su dobili? I ja se izvinjavam, mi smo danas na tu temu razgovarali i uvijek je odgovor, jer mi to tražimo od ministarstava, jer se mi ne bojimo monitoringa ni kontrole, mi tražimo od ministarstava da to urade i uvijek odgovor dobijemo, oni nemaju resursa, a nemaju ni para da to nekoga plate. I do kada će to da traje, a naravno svi znamo da je situacija takva i onda to moram reći opet sve ide po ugledu nevladinog sektora, jer vi znate da je dovoljno da imate jednu organizaciju koja pronevjeri novac, da vas javnost onda okarakteriše da ste svi isti.
Yes, Biljana made a great point, and if there are no questions, we're going to finish up here. But Biljana said something important. We discussed a moment ago that the donors are slowly going back from even financing projects that are related to gender-based violence and so on. But Biljana said something interesting. If we track the money, we almost come to anti-corruption projects, which are severely funded in the region. So maybe we could discuss it through that sort of lens, because this would fall under the anti-corruption. If there's corruption among awarding the grants to organizations and entities from the government, we could track the money through that perspective as well. If there are no other questions, I would love to thank Ana, Biljana, Neira, Eli, and I would love to thank also Angelina, who left a bit earlier. Thank you for sharing the perspectives. I'm sure that we will continue on working together, and feel free to contact us, any of the coordinators, for anything that you need. But also feel free if you have any ideas on how to push this to a higher agenda, or if you have the need to push some issues towards higher levels of government and so on. I'm sure all of our hubs will support you in it. And we are here, and Neira, we're very much looking forward to what happens with the law in Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Biljana, with everything that you've been doing, and Ana as well, with the youth that you're working with, and you're doing a great job in actually trying to make changes for the future generations, not to face the things that we face today, in the sense of governments and in the sense of everything. And yeah, Ellie, we will see each other in the next team meeting. So yeah, but thank you so much for allocating the time to talk to us about this. Thank you, everyone. I hope this was useful, and the video or the recording of this will also be available online for future use. And thank you again to the speakers, and thank you for everyone who stuck with us through the whole session. And see you soon. Hopefully see you in the next, probably, GBWN community session. Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Mercy. Thank you.